Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. We're going to give it a few seconds while people are being allowed into the room here. Hope everybody's having a great day so far. I think we have some great content for everybody today. Hopefully lots of takeaways from our session today. And just a couple more seconds or so as I see a couple of people still trickling in. And I think we should probably be good to go now. All right, welcome again, everybody, to our session today on key trends shaping technology and law firms. So we feel like we have lots of good things to present for you guys today and hopefully give you some great takeaways to bring back to your firms. Jay, if you want to move it along.
There we go.
Yeah, so we'll just cover super quick some housekeeping. We are recording. It's always everybody's favorite question. Hey, is this being recorded? Can I get access? The answer is yes, and we will be sending out links for that. You can ask questions during the webinar. Go ahead and use the Q&A, and we're actually going to prompt you, and hopefully we'll get some participation here from the audience in the Q&A today, and we'll either answer those questions during our content, or we will also leave some time at the end for answering questions as well. So feel free to pump in as many questions as you might want. Yeah, so introducing the panelists, my name is Michael Sugrue, I'm the CRO here with Pace Technical. I'm joined by our CEO, Tyler Sanders from Pace.
Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining us on a sunny Thursday of a long weekend.
Yeah, and from our partners Clio, we have Adam Dennis and Jay Barrett.
Hey, good to see everyone.
Excited to be here.
Awesome. So we'll just keep moving on. I think probably most people on the webinar here have either attended one of our previous webinars. We do several of these throughout the year, these educational webinars. If this is your first time on a webinar, welcome. Just super quick about us. We've been in business now 24 years. We provide our core services, proactive managed IT, managed security, managed cloud services. We're just over 60 people in the company. We're an ISO 9001 business. And for the last 9 years, we've been a great place to work. Yeah, we work with over 60 law firms. We have a lot of experience in this space. And that is a little bit about us. If you haven't had a conversation with us recently, certainly reach out. We'd love to have another conversation about how we might be able to help. Also, as I mentioned, we do a lot of these webinars. If you've been on it before, welcome back. If you haven't, welcome. We do post recordings of all of our webinars on our website. If you just go to pacetechnical.com, under the media dropdown and resources, you'll find access to all the webinars that we've done previously. Lots of good content in there if you want to go back in and review. Yeah, now I'm going to turn it over to Jay and Adam, and they can fill you in on Clio.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to everybody who's on the call. We're super excited to be partners at Pace and to be speaking to everyone on the call here today. Just wanted to provide a quick overview on Clio as an organization so everybody has context. For those who aren't familiar, Clio is the leading cloud-based legal practice management software company in North America. We work with about 40,000 law firms across the globe. We're in 100 different countries. And the general idea is to provide a cloud-based environment to help small to mid-sized law firms manage everything in their firm, from client intake to generating the invoices, collecting payments, calendaring communications, really a one-stop shop as it relates to practice management. We have about 1,000 employees across the board, spread out across product, sales, support, very large sales team, about 150 reps, and we're coming up on 15 years of being in business. It's also worth noting that the image that you see on the screen is at our most recent event. It's the Clio Cloud Conference. It's actually the largest event in legal tech This past year, it was in Nashville. We had about 3,000 in-person attendees and about 2,500 virtual. It's really an opportunity for folks to learn about trends in the industry, key performance indicators, of course, level up on your Clio knowledge and learn about what emerging technologies are coming out. And it's worth mentioning, quick plug here, that our next event is going to be in Austin in October. So if folks are interested in that, feel free to pop that in the chat. We can definitely follow up with some more information.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so wanted to dive into what we're going to be covering today. So we were basically going to frame a conversation around some of the challenges and key trends facing legal in 2024. So what are law firms facing in 2024, how to overcome them, and also we're going to cover AI. So what role AI is playing. It's obviously a buzzword. We're hearing a lot about it on the news, and we really want to level set and talk about that, what that means for law firms. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with how to evaluate new technology. I'm sure a lot of you on this call have a lot of questions on how about you go about evaluating new tools, who do you partner with, stuff like that. And we're gonna dive into that at the end of the presentation, and we'll wrap up with a quick Clio overview and then a Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop that in the Q&A chat, and we're more than happy to get to that. Perfect. So I want to dive into some of the challenges specifically facing law firms in 2024. Obviously, the last couple of years, we've seen this massive shift in technology. Expectations have changed. But I really want to dive into this with our panelists here. So maybe over to the PACE team, either Michael or Tyler. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing law firms face in 2024?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I mean, there really has been a big shift in technology and applications in the legal space. We're seeing a lot of the legacy applications now coming end of life, and people forced with a decision on, having to make a change. We know it's very difficult once you've been invested in an application and all of your data is there. Your people are comfortable with the workflows and understanding, how to use it. And ultimately, a lot of the time, it takes that software vendor to kind of bring it to end of life until you're forced to make that decision. And we're seeing a big shift in just the way that applications are hosted. So, all of the legacy applications, use PC law as an example, because that's one that's coming end of life now, and a lot of firms faced with a decision on where to go next. And all of these, legacy applications, it really required the client to be able to host servers with that application on it, figure out ways to be able to have their users access it. It became a little more difficult with COVID and a remote hybrid type of work model where maybe you needed a virtual desktop and stuff. And this big shift that we're seeing is, with applications being hosted by the software vendors. So, what's called a software as a service model and SaaS, and more of these applications, almost all of them really following this new model of a SaaS-based requirement. So the challenge is, what you do, especially if you have some legacy applications that you still need. They're not end of life. You want to keep running those, but you also have some others where you need to make a decision and figure out where to move next. So, part of that challenge is evaluating the different applications out there, really understanding what the requirements are from a workflow perspective, and helping to determine, what the best application or applications are, and then building out the working model. I talked about the fact that maybe you have to keep some legacy client server applications around, and then you have SaaS-based applications. So what does that environment now look like, and how do you architect it? Are you able to get rid of a virtual desktop type of platform, or do you have to keep that and you now have some SaaS applications in it? So, some big decisions now is, more and more of these legacy client server applications are coming end of life. And there's really even more of a requirement for firms now to leverage technology to stay competitive. To help reduce some costs, to be more efficient, more consistent, build some more automation. And thankfully, but it's also a challenge, there's more software applications out there to choose from. I mean, there used to be, you'd have kind of one primary accounting system for the legal sector. You'd have one document management system. Very few, historically existed. You could have some sort of all-in-one type of platform like Clio that did many of these different functions. So, being able to work through the different options and really make sure that you're selecting an application or applications based on, what your true requirements are and what's going to ultimately service the firm the best.
Yeah. I'd have to say one of the big challenges law firms and lots of businesses are facing all revolves around security. I mean, and the problem with it is, the landscape has just been changing so rapidly over the last several years, and it just continues to be a moving target. Anybody on the call that's responsible for their insurance, or more specifically cyber insurance, over the last 2 or 3 years has seen that change both in price as well as requirements. Geez, I know in our company, our costs for cyber insurance have tripled over the last 2 years. I know I don't like to think about it, but the requirements went from initially with cyber insurance, yeah, if you want cyber insurance, just start paying us the premium and you've got it, to now it being 2, 3, 4, 5-page self-assessments that you need to do, and a whole list of newer requirements, tools, process in place that you need to have to qualify for cyber insurance in general. And we're seeing more and more of insurance companies actually declining coverage for cyber insurance now, just because the amount of claims that have gone in and the amount of money. Insurance companies don't like to pay claims and don't like to lose money. So they're making the requirements a lot more strict. So really the challenge is trying to keep up, especially if you work, any of your clients or vendors are insurance companies or banks. The requirements and compliance, they're pushing their compliance down onto you as well. So the challenge is keeping up with these compliance requirements, and also just making sure that you have the right tools and process in place. You can't get away with just a firewall and antivirus anymore. You need more advanced endpoint security, lots of new tools to navigate around and really understand, like SOC and SIEM solutions. SOC is Security Operations Center, that's constantly looking at logs and things like that. So really understanding what these tools are, the requirements, and making sure that your firm is in compliance with those.
No, that's super helpful. It's tons of things to consider for firms, and I know it seems to be always adapting and changing really rapidly. So thank you for that insight. And I know at Clio we have slightly different expertise and experience. So I'd love to pass it over to you. Like, what challenges are you seeing law firms face in 2024?
Yeah, absolutely. Two main things come to mind. I'm going to piggyback on Tyler's first point about emerging tech. It's pretty unbelievable to see all the new vendors and startups that are popping up in legal tech. It's really exciting, but it's a double-edged sword, right? At the same time, there's a huge burden on the consumer side of choosing the right type of partner, just because there's so much out there, right? Clio's always at these trade shows. I've been going to the ABA Tech Show and Legal Week for the past 3 years, and it's been incredible to see how many new booths are popping up. Like, it's pretty much doubled in size. And as I said, as much as that's exciting, there's a huge challenge now of delineating what tools are necessary, what tools can be trusted, and making sure that you have the right partner in place to help you navigate those types of decisions, because it's critical. In addition to that, I think it's so important that the tool that you choose has an open ecosystem. In other words, for the more technical folks on the call, an open API. In that it's critical as things evolve within the industry and new technologies become more prevalent, that you can plug and play your existing technology into new tools. It's also going to help with the adoption of the new technology. For instance, if you're using Gmail or Outlook, you can plug that tool into whatever technology you're currently using to make sure it's a more seamless integration, and that there's a better rate of adoption across the firm. The other sort of challenge that we're seeing is more on the collection front. So every year, Clio puts out a legal trends report where we consolidate all the data across our clients and we anonymize it into a really helpful report that goes over KPIs, trends, challenges, a lot of what we're discussing on this call. And probably the single biggest takeaway from this year's report is this concept of lockup, which pretty much is a measure of how quickly law firms get paid after sending their bills to clients. And we sort of identified 3 core terms as it relates to lockup, which is realization lockup, and that's the amount of revenue that's unbilled at any given time. See, my dog Rue is making an appearance. Yeah, realization lockup.
One of the panelists. He's
Yeah,
joining
yeah.
us.
She has very strong opinions on lockup, let me tell you. So as I was saying, revenue lockup is the amount of revenue that's unbilled at any given time. Collection lockup refers to the amount of revenue that's uncollected at a given time. And then total lockup would be the combination of revenue held in both realization and collection lockup. And the reason we're bringing this up is because on average, the median realization lockup for firms is 38 days, and the median collection lockup is 45 days, meaning in total, that's about 97 days, where at any given time, law firms are performing over 3 months worth of work that hasn't been billed or collected on. And the implication of that is that if there isn't cash on hand at the business, there's going to be some serious cash flow concerns there, right? You can't pay your staff, you can't invest in marketing, you can't purchase new technology. So a lot of what we're thinking about at Clio is how we can alleviate this strain, how we can make firms more effective in improving their billing process, improving their collection process, and keeping cash on hand.
Amazing. No, thank you, Adam. And also what we're seeing too, I just want to add is like client expectations as well have really changed within legal. So response time, folks are really focusing on how fast people respond. And what we know, I'm a marketer myself, and it's harder and harder to retain or generate new leads. It's becoming noisy in the market. So that's one thing that I just wanted to add is keeping those leads top of mind, top of funnel are really, really important to generating cash flow in business. Awesome. So obviously there's been massive shifts in the last couple of years around technology, around law firms. But I'd love to pass it over to our experts on what shifts have you seen in legal technology over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'll start with this one. One of the big tech shifts that we've seen over the last several years is almost 100% adoption with Microsoft 365. We still see, some very, very few firms that might be utilizing the G Suite, or some that might still have their own hosted Microsoft Exchange that they're still running. By the way, I mean, most firms aren't hosting their own Exchange servers anymore. There's just so much risk and overhead associated with managing that. But not only the adoption just into Microsoft 365, that's not the newest thing, but really more of a trend into going a little bit deeper into the Microsoft ecosystem. Instead of just getting the standard version of Microsoft 365, firms are opting for Business Premium or something even above that gets them access to some additional tools, where we're seeing with most firms that are working in some sort of a hybrid environment, or really needing that flexibility, that mobility, and really leveraging a lot of cloud services, these additional security tools, as an example, safe link protection that comes with Business Premium, is definitely a valuable tool to have. Whether you're accessing systems in the office or accessing remote desktop, Citrix, Azure Virtual Desktop, and whatnot, these additional tools. So that's definitely a shift that we've seen, is real full adoption into the Microsoft ecosystem, specifically with 365.
Yeah, I kind of going back to what I was talking about previously too. One of the big shifts, it's moving away from hosted servers and this client server type of application structure. So whether you're hosting servers in your office or in a data center or a private cloud, so more adoption into the software as a service, web-based applications. But then also, it's if you're coming from a bunch of different on-premise type of applications, it's very hard to just move away from those. So there's still a requirement to have some servers hosted. So we're seeing a big shift of people moving more and more into Azure, and Azure for whether it's virtual desktop and or server hosting. And part of this trend, I mean, Microsoft's done a good job of controlling and bringing down some of the costs of Azure hosting, where several years ago it was pretty cost prohibitive, especially for a small mid-sized firm, but they've gotten better there. But also building out, kind of Mike, on your point there, with more adoption to 365. I mean, Azure integrates so well with 365. It's all really part of this, big ecosystem that Microsoft's developed. So the more you, the more of the Microsoft stack that you adopt and leverage, the more functionality and features you get from that, and the more that security is all tied together. We're going to talk a little bit more about AI further on in this webinar, but Copilot also is now a great example of this with Microsoft's release of that. And the more Microsoft stack you're using, the more functionality and the more benefits you can get from Copilot.
Awesome. Now we're to you, Adam. What shifts have you seen in legal?
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit earlier. I think Tyler made a point about seeing a huge shift to the cloud and off of sort of like on-premise solutions. We're definitely seeing that from our side, and the data supports that. In our latest report, we found that less than 30% of lawyers continue to work exclusively from the office, and about 50% of non-lawyers are in the same boat. There's clearly a huge need now to have access to your work in a cloud environment. Something that our CEO often says is that, because of the pandemic, we've seen sort of the rate of adoption of cloud-based technology get compressed into 2 years, as opposed to what we forecasted to be over the next 10 years. When Clio came to market in 2008 and they introduced the concept of putting lawyers in the cloud, people thought that they were absolutely crazy, right? What are you talking about, right? I'm sure if we could see folks' reactions at the booth in the ABA Tech Show, then it would have been a sight to see. But now it's really it's a need to have, right? It's must. So that's definitely been a huge shift. The other sort of trend that we're seeing, to Jay's earlier point, is that client expectations are changing. Response time and being able to get back to clients in a timely fashion is now more important than ever. From the Legal Trends report, again, the number one indicator for why a lead will go with a law firm is response time. It's simply a matter of who's going to get back to the lead the quickest. So it's absolutely imperative that a firm's technology supports that workflow, and we're enabling folks with boots on the ground to respond to these leads in a timely fashion. Other things that are coming up are, leveraging tools like client portals and communication like text messaging. 79% of clients expect a response within 24 hours. So it's a matter of meeting clients where they want to be met and making sure that you have the technology infrastructure to facilitate that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really good point, Adam. You want to meet your clients where they want to be met, and quick responses. That's always key. So we talked a lot about technology and some of the changes, but I'd love to know from you guys, what are some of the common challenges law firms face when implementing new technology? I'd love to pass it over to Adam first.
Yeah, I think from our side, something that's often overlooked when these evaluations are taking place is what's the post-sale process, right? Oftentimes it's all about the feature, the pain point. It makes sense, right? You're trying to address the most pressing and imminent need. But something that we talk a lot about here at Clio is technology adoption and giving thought to what that workflow looks like post-sale. Just because, oftentimes, the firm will purchase a tool for that specific pain point, whether it's billing or collections or whatever it may be. And it's important that there's true enablement going on across the firm to make sure that the technology is being adopted properly. So something that we've invested heavily on is an onboarding team, right? Making sure that every new firm who signs up with Clio gets an onboarding agent. Data migration is included as well. That's a huge piece as well, just because obviously, firms you're storing your data in a specific way in present day, and we want to make sure that we can replicate that environment in a new tool that you're going to be bringing it in. So making sure that there's thought given to what that post-sale process looks like as it relates to onboarding and data migration.
Perfect. Now we're to
I'll go pre-sale then, Adam. So post-sale stuff really important, but pre-sale equally important. And when I say pre-sale, I'm really referring to just that the diligence that you need to put in up front and really clearly identifying what it is, let's call it from a workflow perspective, what those requirements are. really detailing those out, prioritizing what's important, most important out of those things, and then evaluating the different technology software applications based on a consistent list of requirements. It's easy to get caught up when you're evaluating multiple platforms, multiple solutions, and getting caught up in maybe some of the bells and whistles or some of the other features there, and you kind of get lost in it. And we see firms make this mistake where they get sold on something that they weren't initially intending on buying, or it's not as strong in the areas that are really important to them as some of the features that they thought might be useful in the future. So making sure and having the key stakeholders involved in setting out those requirements. We know there's so many different departments with different functionalities within a law firm. You need to understand from each different area of practice, or even the different roles, from an accounting perspective, from an intake perspective, clerks, from lawyers, partners, and compiling that list, again, prioritizing it, and then evaluating each of the different technologies from that consistent list. And sometimes then it's where are you willing to compromise? It's easy to look, and there's so many different applications out there and technologies, as we've been describing for legal. And you could easily get caught up in trying to get best in breed for every single one of those workflows. And maybe that works well if you're only looking to really fulfill a couple of workflows, but you don't want to also end up with 6 different applications and saying, hey, we've got best of breed now in accounting and document management and document assembly, and you end up with all of these different applications and maybe lose some integration, and you're creating complexity in how people use them and getting trained and getting onboarded. So again, by prioritizing, you're kind of setting, what are the most important things you want from an application. And then if you can reduce the number of applications and get more of an all-in-one type of solution, maybe you're willing to compromise a little bit over, what a best in breed for that specific workflow is, because the all-in-one does it. It's less, it doesn't necessarily do it as well as the best in breed, but it does it well enough to satisfy the firm's requirements, and you're reducing the total number of applications and complexity in the environment.
Awesome. No, thanks, Tyler. One thing I'd love to learn more about is ways that a well-designed tech stack contributes to better risk management and compliance, specifically within legal. Would love to pass over to the PACE team to start.
Yeah, I'll kind of just keep going on my previous points, and again, just keeping, data governance is really important, and being able to manage, secure, control data in the fewer number of applications and locations makes it easier to accomplish that. So a few years ago, we talked a lot about, cloud sprawl, especially at the onset of COVID, and everybody having to go to a hybrid or a remote work environment. And people took it, in a firm, took it upon themselves to find ways to conveniently be able to access, share, and store documents or any type of data. And what ended up happening is just all different departments, different practices within the firm, different people storing data in different locations, signing up for a quick Dropbox account, putting stuff in OneDrive, all these different file sharing platforms, without any real controls or governance around that, and storing stuff locally on computers. And, then all of a sudden the firm's data ends up all over the place. It's not necessarily secure. It can get orphaned. All of a sudden, somebody leaves the firm. Nobody knows they put all of this sensitive information in a Dropbox account. So really, part of this exercise needs to be consolidating your data into fewer number of applications, ideally, building the data governance controls around it, and making it a standard that's enforced within the firm. So everybody knows when we're sharing documents, this is the tool we use. This is where we save documents. If you're using document management types of systems, all of our emails are going to get filed to the appropriate matter in the document management system. So really, to control the risk is to control the data and just put the right security and controls there.
Yeah, I love this this question, and speaking about the keywords, tech stack. When most people hear the words tech stack, they're thinking, all right, the tools and the software and the applications that we use in the firm. And certainly the software, whether it's the practice management, document management, accounting that's used, obviously very important. And other IT tools, probably the first thing that comes to people's minds is going to be security tools, your antivirus and endpoint detection, the firewall, all of those things. Definitely very, very important. But there is one key component that we see a lot missing in a tech stack, and that's really how the whole tech stack, the applications, the tools, et cetera, are managed and maintained. Because I'll tell you, that's where you are going to see the biggest difference in results that you're going to see around your tech stack. So, the old, and it has to be a proactive model as well. You as a firm have to know that somebody is looking into all the settings, configurations, and that tech stack as a whole to make sure it is right, and then measure it on an ongoing basis to make sure you're seeing the right results for your people, that you're by IT issues and whatnot. So the only way to really ensure that is by having, some proactive means of how you manage it. A key piece of that is around strategy, and having the right strategic advice, and somebody that really understands law firms, understands your workflows, that can help you make these decisions around the applications that you use, and help you understand what your results, what the metrics are that you should be looking at, and then reporting all those to you. You as a firm need to be working with somebody, whether it's your internal IT team or an external IT team. You need to demand the information to you that shows you everything that's been looked at, everything that you have under your tech stack, how it's performing, what those results are, and more importantly, from a security perspective, if you have any areas of risk or concern with the way that you are set up and configured today. That old IT model that you can get from hundreds of companies, it still exists, where people will set up applications, set up hardware, and then just wait for it to break and just try and fix it and throw Band-Aids on it. That doesn't work anymore. There's too much disruption, too much risk associated with that kind of a model. So really, everybody needs to have that kind of proactive management and the strategic element in their tech stack, and it's often forgotten.
Yeah, well said. Just really quickly from my end, just add one point. Just want to echo Tyler's earlier comment about having a single source of truth. I think it really comes back to consolidating technology and just minimizing complexity. And I think the other piece to consider as well is just to reduce manual entry where and when possible, right? Try and automate as much as we can, as much as we'd like to think we're fantastic at doing our jobs, which we are. Human error is a real thing. And as much as we can automate that and free up time, it's just going to help overall in terms of the risk management piece.
Great, thanks for that, Adam. And this is probably a question directed to you, Adam. Earlier, you mentioned collections as being a big challenge for law firms, but I'd love for you to share some best practices on how law firms can improve collections.
Yeah, as I said before, this is something we think about a lot at Clio. The truth is, it's a complex challenge in terms of keeping track of all these metrics as it relates to collections, but it's a pretty simple solution, and it's going back to the basics, right? It's a matter of emailing out bills, right? It's shocking how many firms are still mailing out their invoices. So emailing bills is going to help firms get paid quicker, offering firms more options to offering clients more options to make payment, whether it's by way of payment plan or credit cards, even tap to pay, or having a mobile wallet. Just more options. It goes back to really meeting that client where they want to be met. And then again, if a client has a significant lump sum that they have to make payment on, maybe we can break that up into chunks. And instead of having to pay it all up front, we can break it up into a monthly cadence with different installment amounts.
Amazing, thanks. And last question on this topic. Any advice on how a firm can best position themselves to build this high-performing legal tech stack? Maybe I'll start with Pace to ask your opinion.
I mean, we've kind of gone through already the selection process and making sure that you're picking the right applications. But once you've gone through that, then making sure that you're meeting the requirements even if it's a SaaS-based application, meeting the requirements, sometimes SaaS-based application does require things to run locally on the laptop. So making sure that you're not only meeting, but exceeding, what that software vendor's requirements are, making sure the right, everything being some, every application is going to have some dependency on internet these days. So making sure in the office that there's the right speed, consistency in the data circuit, redundancy in that data circuit. People that are working from home are going to subscribe to the right internet plan to satisfy the requirements of that connectivity. And then, monitoring, managing a lot of what Mike said, just, it's not set it and forget it that you put a new IT system in, and network in, a computer in, and just let it run until it breaks or starts to slow down. There needs to be the right monitoring, management, optimizations done to make sure the security is strong and make sure things perform at their best capability.
Perfect. Thanks. Over to you, Adam.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that point is it's just so important to define what the firm's KPIs are, right? Like, what are we trying to work towards from a key performance standpoint? Whether it's improving the collection rate, improving the amount of revenue or leads that are being brought into the firm, and then reverse engineering around those and having the right technology in place that's going to support those goals.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Just to recap on some of the trends we talked about. So really, we're seeing a shift in technology with law firms. Like we talked about, cybersecurity is changing. The move to the cloud has changed, as well as the move to the SaaS model has all shifted in the last few years. Some kind of key things to think about is, how are you meeting client expectations? So how has your end client, their expectations shifted, and how can technology help fill in those gaps? We talk about legacy systems, how that shift, whether it's end of life or whether you're just looking to move off server-based systems. And then the shift in remote work dynamic. I know Adam shared some stats around how that is changing, whether it be lawyers or non-lawyers, working remotely and working from different locations. So I just want to summarize the discussion and go next slide. Then I also want to spend some time talking about artificial intelligence. Obviously, we see a lot of news stories about it. It's starting to enter the mainstream. So I'd love to pass it on to our panelists to talk about what your views are on AI and how this is going to really impact legal going forward. I'll start with Pace. Let's start with Pace. Go ahead.
Sure. And I can start off. So really, when we're thinking about AI and a lot of the tools that are coming down the pipe, it's almost like evaluating any other kind of a tool, making sure that you have a plan in place first and identifying, what are your goals and what are you really trying to accomplish in your firm first, and then trying to find the tools that will help you accomplish that, versus going the other way around. When new tools come out, everybody, this new shiny object, and everybody wants to try it, and they want to just figure out, how can we make this tool work for us, versus the more logical way that we try and help and consult with our clients is to identify the need first, the requirement, the goal, and then try and leverage the tool as well. One other key element to AI and any new tools as well that we have to look at, again, in this day and age, I'm going to bring it up again, is security, because AI has, great, it's powerful, can really help you, but at the same time can also really expose you and add in potential layers of risk that you're unaware of. Yeah, and Tyler, we've started looking at these tools and trying out these tools as well. Do you want to maybe give some of our...
I was just going to say, yeah, like we're piloting Copilot right now internally. A lot of buzz around that for good reason. We've had a lot of clients inquiring about it. And on the topic of security, we often think about security, protecting the firm from the outside worlds. But when you start to look at AI, and Copilot being a great example here, so much of that security needs to exist internally within the firm, because AI will find anything you ask it to that it has access to. So some examples with Copilot is you could ask, what are everybody's salaries in the firm? If the right internal security is in place to protect that information, anyone in the firm could query that and get access to that information. And you can only imagine then how it could spiral from there, all the different queries that people could go to Copilot for to start to query sensitive information within the firm. So one of the most important elements, along with this plan on how, what are the goals for implementing some form of AI or some use of AI, but then what are the security measures that need to go in place to protect you not only from external threats, but also internally in protecting, the ethical walls within the firm.
Awesome. Now over to you, Adam.
Yeah, it's well said, and I think Clio has a very similar philosophy on AI. We're cautiously optimistic. It's definitely a tool that we think is going to amplify the impact of folks within the legal industry. We are certainly leveraging AI here at Clio, but at the same time, we're also well aware of the potential drawbacks in AI. And I think to your point, Tyler, it's so important that firms are being mindful of what that AI policy looks like at the firm, right? Like I know at Clio, for instance, we're encouraged to leverage AI. It's a great tool, but at the same time, let's not put sensitive information in it, and let's understand what tools we're using. We're being very deliberate. So I know that's something we've given a lot of thought to. Our CEO recently said it at a conference I was at. It's like having an extra junior associate, but one that might lie to you, right? So I'm sure we're all familiar with the ChatGPT lawyer who used AI to cite case law. It did a really good job, but the challenge is that it hallucinated some of the case law that it brought into the mix. So I think it's a really good tool that can automate some of that manual work, maybe get you 60% of the way there. But by no means does Clio view this as something that's going to replace the role of lawyers, just enhance their output.
Yeah, just to add one other point, we are working on a Copilot webinar, so stay tuned for that.
Nice. I'll be signing up. Definitely interested. Awesome. So this is for the PACE team. We talked a lot about new technologies and how to implement them, but I'd love you to walk the audience through how a firm can go about evaluating these new technology pieces.
Yeah, I can touch on this. And I remember we had a slide on it. So you mind just toggling through some of those points? Yeah. We've talked a little bit about all of this. We've touched on it, so I'll move through fairly quickly. But again, identifying the need. So this is clearly identifying the requirements. Make sure you're capturing the requirements from everybody within the firm, all the different people that are going to require some use of the technology. Very important to involve the key stakeholders, both in the evaluation of new technology software and also throughout the implementation of it. The more people involved in this, the better the outcome will be. The last thing, and the better adoption also. People will be more committed to it. They'll be more understanding of the challenges if they're involved in the entire process, including the implementation and training of it. Too often we see, one or two people within a firm go off, they do the evaluation, they do all the hard work to get this thing live, haven't involved enough people in it, and then it's just people protest having to go to a new platform. They find all the things wrong with the new platform. All of a sudden, that application they used to hate that they've been using for years, they love. And if only it did it like the old application, meanwhile, everyone wanted to get rid of it. So really having the buy-in and the commitment from all the right people in the firm will help make it more easily adopted, and a better perception of kind of what you're getting into and how to manage it. I talked a little bit before about assess the compatibility, but even more so, and Adam, you touched on, I think it was you, Adam, that mentioned about having open APIs, and what is the future potential to expand out. So can you, down the road, could you, if you find that you need, a more robust document management system or something that's in more of an all-in-one type of platform, does it have the capability to integrate with that? What other applications does it have integrations into? That also really ties into the scalability of it. So scalability being, can it expand out to other integrations to other platforms? And scalability, what are its limitations? SharePoint's a great example. We've seen a lot of firms kind of adopt SharePoint, move into this, and they didn't really think through, what is their total data set? SharePoint has an initial limitation of 1 terabyte. So if you have more than that, understanding what are the costs to increase the storage, how do you back up the SharePoint environment? It doesn't necessarily handle every different type of file, multimedia files, CAD drawings, things like that. So scalability, how do you grow into it, and making sure that it can scale to, the way that your firm's going to scale. Planning, training, and support, crucial pieces to a successful implementation. All of the planning that goes into the application selection, the training is great to do ahead of a go live, but it only has a very limited amount of relevance to people that aren't yet using the application. So we always encourage our clients that get people trained before you implement that new technology, but even more important, after they go live, whether it's a week, 2 weeks later, now they're using this new technology, they're starting to have a lot more focused questions on things they wanted to do, or where do they find certain things, or can it do this? So way too often we see, firms that'll put a lot of effort into the training up front. People pay half attention. It's not relevant yet to them. And then there's not that post-implementation training and support necessary. And then false assumptions get made. They start to spread throughout the firm. Hey, this application, it can't even do this. And everybody just takes it as a matter of fact, where really it's a training issue and they don't understand how the application or technology can fulfill the requirements for that workflow. So really important, have a good project plan in place, pre-go live training, post-go live training, and then really good support post-go live also, to make sure people get answers to the questions they have. We know it's really difficult for a firm to get everybody to adopt a new technology. This makes it much easier if they have the support they need, if it's easy for them to use once they go live. Otherwise, we know if it starts to become too difficult, too cumbersome, they're not familiar with it, they just say, I'm not using the new application, I don't like it, and I'm out, and then you lose the adoption rate.
Yeah, all really good advice for adopting. So I appreciate that, and find the scalability piece really interesting, as well as just making sure your technology can scale with you, whether, like Adam mentioned, open API, so you can plug and play different tools. Such an important factor when considering technology. Awesome. So now, Adam, this is over to you to cover a little bit of what Clio can do and how we can help your firm.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep this fairly brief. Just thought it'd be helpful to give folks a bit more granularity in terms of what Clio does from a product standpoint. Of course, if folks want to take a deeper dive, please don't hesitate to reach out. But overall, there's sort of 3 core modules to Clio. Clio Grow is our intake and CRM tool. In 2018, we acquired a company called Lexicata, which was the leading intake and CRM tool within legal. We since rebranded it as Clio Grow. And this is really meant to streamline and automate a firm's intake process. So it goes back to the point I made earlier about the importance of having a really lean intake funnel to optimize for response time, just because that is the leading indicator for why a lead will hire a firm. So this is everything from having sort of like a Kanban view to keep track of the different stages of the intake process, moving leads through the various stages to make sure that the firm's capitalizing on any potential new business and converting them into matters as quickly as possible, running reports on marketing so the firm can understand where the bulk of their revenue is coming from, what are the most lucrative marketing avenues, automating those intake forms so no one at the firm has to manually do it, all that good stuff. Once that lead has actually been retained and a matter is created and the casework begins, that would be done in Clio Manage. So that's our practice management tool, sort of the meat and potatoes of the system. Everything from generating bills, keeping track of communications, so pulling in the text messaging, all the emails, client portal, calendaring. The other piece is Clio Payment. So we have our own in-house payment processing tool. And I think this goes back to Tyler's point about minimizing complexity and consolidating your technology. Rather than having an intake solution, a billing solution, something for calendaring, something for payments, you can bring it all together in a cloud-based environment, whether it's Clio or another all-in-one platform. So yeah, that's a high-level overview. Of course, there's far more functionality within the system, but for the purpose of this call, I want to keep it quite brief.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. And I also just want to share with everyone that we have a current offer We call it the break free offer. And this is to help firms who are stuck in a contract with a legal practice management make the transition to Clio. So based on your remaining value of your long-term contract, you can get up to 6 months free of Clio. All you have to do is speak to a specialist, Clio specialist, and we can help figure out what that looks like. It's a really good offer. A lot of firms are taking advantage of this to help avoid double paying for a legal practice management software. So with that, I think we have a poll question. Just an easy one. If you'd like a personalized demo of Clio, we're happy to jump on a call and walk you through how this could fit in your firm. Just let us know in the poll what you want us to contact you after. Leave it up for like 15 more seconds.
Yeah.
Awesome. While it's up, I do have a couple questions here in the Q&A. If you have any more questions for our panelists, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. But Adam, I do have a question around migrations. So how does migrations typically work at Clio? Yeah, I'd love to give you Tanny would love some more insight into that.
Yeah, it's an important question, and it sort of goes back to the point I made earlier, where oftentimes this isn't something that's considered in the evaluation process. But the migration is included in the cost per user per month at Clio. It's not an additional fee. We have a team dedicated to it. So when a firm moves forward with Clio, whether it's on a monthly or annual plan, they'll be connected with our onboarding team. They'll scope out how their data is currently being organized, and then they'll be connected with a migration specialist. And we can bring over, matters, contacts, unbilled time, and even more depending on how the data is currently being structured. And then, of course, we have a network of fantastic partners like the PACE team to support that migration and make sure it's as seamless as possible.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and Adam, maybe this is one more for you around remote work. How does Clio help enable remote work? Do you have any practical examples of how law firms have used it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in this channel partnerships role for the past 2 years, but prior to that, I was on the sales side of things. I was an account executive, and I worked with tons of law firms really across the globe. And I've worked with countless firms who actually manage their entire practice from the mobile app. Of course, Clio is a web-based platform, similar to Netflix. You can sign in anywhere you are. But I've worked with tons of firms who just manage their entire firm from the mobile app. They've taken calls from the beach, they've taken calls from different cities or states. So it's pretty incredible to see what the right technology can allow firms to do.
Awesome. Thank you. And if there's any more questions, feel free to pop it in the Q&A. I think that's all the questions we have. We have some time back. And Tyler, you wanna wrap us up?
Yeah, I actually had one question, and I guess Clio in the early inception was more focused on small size firms, right? And that's changed over the years because I know years ago when people would talk to us about Clio, we'd say, hey, I think your firm's too big for it. But I think now you've got a much larger range of the number of users that Clio is suited for, right?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. Historically, at least when Clio first launched all the way back in 2008, it was really a tool for solo and small law firms. But over the past, I'd say 5 years or so, we've made significant strides to move up market, so much so that what we refer to as mid-market, which is 20 users and above, is one of our fastest growing business units across Clio. So to answer your question directly, I would say that we can support firms anywhere from one user firm all the way up to a 250, 300 user firm. And that ceiling is continually getting higher and higher as we roll out new products and enhancements.
Thanks. I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today, and feel free to reach out to Clio and or PACE for more information. Happy to do a personal demo. I know the guys at Clio would be more than happy to give you a demo of the product. Mike and I are available to talk to you about IT requirements, security requirements, helping to evaluate different software applications. And hope everyone enjoys the Easter long weekend and the sunshine we're seeing right now. And hope you join us for the next one, which will, for PACE anyhow, we'll be doing our next webinar on Copilot.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, you will get an email within the next couple of days with a link to the recording, and it'll also have our contact information should you need it or want to reach out.
Amazing. Well, thank you, everyone.
Well, yeah, thank you for having us, and thanks everyone for your time, and have a great long weekend.
Yep. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye now.